Governor Palin, you've continually told us that we need to seek common sense solutions to America's problems. However, in order to seek the solution, we sometimes need to recognize what the problem is. Mr. President, you've told us through your book, The Audacity of Hope, that we can reclaim the American dream. But for 1.6 million Americans currently forced by their own government into institutions under the rules of Medicaid, the audacity of hope has quickly become the hopelessness of despair. You've told us, Mr. President, that you wanted to reform our healthcare system because Americans deserved greater choice. Well, if we needed it in the private sector, it is most desperately desired in the public sector program called Medicaid. In 1965, President Johnson signed into law the provision that would become Medicaid. The program has grown into a primary long-term care system not only for the poor, but also for the middle class of America. As a result, an entire population of people who pull themselves up by their own bootstraps have been forced by their own government to separate from the ones they love and live their lives in isolation and sadness, all under the guise of compassion. Today, Governor, there are more than 1.6 million Americans being cared for in America's nursing homes. Most of them don't want to be there, nor do they choose to be there. Worse yet, all middle-class Americans are vulnerable to Medicaid's soul-destroying effects, and they don't even know it. I know because I am one of those middle-class Americans who's been affected by the sadness of Medicaid. But it wasn't me who lost my freedom. It was my mother. You see, Governor, in 2003, under the rules of Medicaid, I was forced by my own government to place my mother into an institutional care facility. She didn't want to be there, and I didn't want to put her there. I wanted her to live with me so I could assist in her care, so that she could bond with her grandchildren and feel like an integral part of the family that she had helped to create. But my own government left me no choice. And for 5 long years, she lived her life apart from those she loved. I tried everything I could to bring her home. I even went to the Connecticut State Legislature and I asked them to pass language that would allow me to bring services into my home under Medicaid. And while it took me only 6 months to get the program passed, it took the government 2 years to get it implemented. As a result, I only succeeded in bringing her home for the last 6 days of her life. I failed, Governor. I failed to give her the quality of life she deserved in those last few years of her life. We don't need to let other people go through this again. We can change it. After her death, I went back to the legislature and I gave them a formula to convert our Medicaid system from the one that is institutionally biased to one that is choice-centered. I did so in the hope that no one would ever again suffer my mother's fate. The leaders of both parties in both the Senate and the House came together and hailed this as an idea whose time had come. The bill was passed unanimously by both Democrats and Republicans. And because of this simple formula, the state of Connecticut is now saving up to 64% of the cost of Medicaid by allowing people to continue to live their lives surrounded by those that they love in a place of their own choosing. Sadly, however, the leaders of our state reneged on their promise. And rather than reinvesting the savings as they had promised to do so that more people would come home sooner, they took the money and they put it into the deficit. By doing so, they condemned thousands of people to live and die in the kind of sadness that only the isolation of institutionalized care could bring. Now, Governor and Mr. President, I come to you to ask for your help. I have the formula to convert our Medicaid program to a choice-centered system so that all Americans can live out their lives within the fullness of the American dream. I have the formula that will end our government's practice of forcing citizens into nursing homes, separating families and ruining lives. We can convert the system without raising taxes, without cutting services, without generating new revenues, and without cutting anyone else's budget. In fact, through this formula, we can not only give millions back their freedom, but we can also create 250,000 new jobs nationwide, and we can cut the growth rate of Medicaid by 30%. As Americans, we cannot be satisfied to say to our cherished seniors and disabled that we are a compassionate society. It's not right that in the name of compassion we are able to say, we know we're taking away your liberty. We know we're taking your ability to grow as human beings despite your age or disability. We know we're taking you away from your family and community, but we're taking care of you. And as a society, we feel good about that. This is not compassion, Governor. This is injustice. This is not health care. It's incarceration because of the need of health care. We can do better. Please, Governor, help me help them. Mr. President, you once said that you were open to good ideas. Well, sir, I have a good idea. But, Mr. President, this issue is about far more than health care or balancing budgets. In fact, you yourself alluded to the issue when you said that your grandmother needed only a little bit of help. You see, sir, when our government takes people away from the ones they love, they begin to question their faith. When they question their faith, they begin to lose hope. When they lose hope, sir, it's a clear sign that this program is no longer seated in compassion, but rather in injustice. Our seniors and disabled have waited for their freedom and suffered in silence far too long. As Reverend King once pointed out, justice delayed is justice denied. Just because a person grows old or becomes disabled does not mean they cherish their freedom any less. In fact, I would argue they cherish it even more. The time has come, sir, for them to experience compassion within the framework of liberty. The time has come for choice-centered Medicaid. Can we give our seniors and our disabled hope? Can we reunite them with their families? Can we allow them to have relevancy in their lives and allow them to contribute to their families and to society? With your help, Governor, you betcha. With your help, Mr. President, yes, we can.
In this quest for choice-centered Medicaid, Joe is now bringing this fight for basic freedom to Congress and the nation. Joe has already received about 30,000 letters of support, including support from the media. Now, Joe is asking for 1 million letters of support from America, asking Congress to reform Medicaid and making it a choice-centered plan. Please join Joe Stango and be an advocate for a choice-centered Medicaid program. Support Dora's Hope. To further the work of Dora's Hope, so more Medicaid recipients can choose to live at home, you can send your letters of support or checks made payable to Dora's Hope, P.O. Box 192, Southbury, Connecticut 06488. Or, for more information, you can go to www.dorashope.org. Thank you, and God bless.